Hi, everybody. Geoff here. Before the episode starts proper, we just wanted to make a brief statement about some recent events in the entertainment industry and video games in particular. At the time of this episode, August 2nd, 2024, SAG-AFTRA is on strike while negotiating for, amongst other things, better protections against generative AI for the actors who do voiceover, motion capture, and other work in the gaming industry. Fun and Games Podcast is not paid or otherwise compensated to promote any video games, and any opinion we give on games past, present, and future is our own. Both Matt and I support and stand with SAG-AFTRA in their efforts to protect artists. The video game industry can feel unstable these days, and we stand with the work to ensure protections to the safety and long-term health of the industry, and not just actors, but all the artists whose work is responsible for these games we love. At this time, SAG-AFTRA has walked out on current projects, but not called for a boycott. Please, continue to enjoy your favorite games. If you'd like to know more about the strike, what it entails, and what it could mean for the future, you can learn about it on SAG-AFTRA's website at sagaftra.org. You can also visit the website for the National Association of Voice Actors, navavoices.org, to find out more about some of the efforts that are going into advocating for these changes, as well as riders and FAQs for other voice actors to protect themselves and their work as the strike continues and our relationship with generative AI evolves. And with that out of the way, let's start the episode proper. Thank you. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Jeff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, A.K. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to episode 174. And folks, listeners, gamers, we are so hyped. We are ready. We are prepared. We are upon the precipice of presentation. We have garnered greatness in gaming to give to you. Because we're talking about showcases and presentation within the indie gaming space and the greater gaming space. And to help us out with that, we are joined by co-founders, the creative director, and program coordinator of 6-1 Indie, Kyle Stephenson and Mike Towndrow. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh my goodness. Every time I'm on like another friend's podcast and like the intro is so professional.
Yeah.
I feel like such a piece of trash, you know? I'm out here on IndieCast introing like, what body part do you wash first in the shower? and talking about in the debate about like when you step out of the shower, do you squeegee yourself? I'm a squeegee person.
No,
I don't know about y'all.
You go straight for the towel.
No,
Yeah,
you gotta squeegee first.
No.
You have to save the bandwidth of the towel. Indie games.
Indie games, right, exactly.
Indie games.
We are so excited to have you both here. We can also officially apologize on air now for missing the mass 6-1 IndieCast at East. Someone got sick at the end of the function, so we weren't able to do it, but we will eventually rectify that. But thank you for the invite, and it was a pleasure hanging out with you guys at East. And while we were at East, in fact, I think 3 of us were out to lunch with Jacob and like a few other people, and I looked at Mike and went, hey, do you want to do an episode about showcases? And Mike's like, yeah, sure.
And here we are. 5 months later.
5 months later, which is actually on time for us, I feel like, for the group of us, because we're not busy at all doing anything.
Absolutely
There's
not.
nothing else going on.
This doesn't get exponentially harder with every moment in person, but it's fine.
Yeah,
we're fine.
Working in the industry is not crippling.
No,
It's great.
Totally. Tons of free time. I play so many games. But before we get into the broader conversation about showcases and how they've kind of dominated the gaming space, the reason I wanted to have both of you here is because you guys produce your own indie showcase. And you've not done it once, not twice, but several times at this point, and multiple times a year now, which, you know, is a choice.
We're crazy. It's fine.
We have no leg to stand on in saying this. We just don't have a showcase to put on. That's
yeah. Am I constantly writing articles, editing podcasts? It's a different workload, but it's still a workload. But in all seriousness, like the showcase that you guys did for East was incredible. You had How many games was it at the East Showcase?
Oof. 33 in the main show, 6 in the pre-show. So math, 39.
There you go.
That's a lot of games.
A lot of games.
A lot of games.
Well, it's a lot of games, but then when you realize we had to cut it down from 1,000 plus submissions.
Oh my god.
So yeah, the PAX East submission process, we had a total of 993 individual submissions, but within those submissions were multiple games for certain parties. So a little over 1,000, we like to say, to be safe.
Yep.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
And so I guess to start, like 6-1 Indie has always championed indie games, done lots of great content online, podcasts, video form. But when you started doing the showcases, where did that come from? Was it just wanting to highlight a space that you were already championing?
So that was, I distinctly remember myself, Kelsey, who wife, also the other co-founder of 6-1, Kyle, and our editor-in-chief, Harry, we were all in my, at the time, Sleepy Hollow apartment. And it was around Christmas because we were all gathered together watching the Devolver Digital Christmas special.
Yeah.
Which classic. If you've never watched those, I highly recommend it. They are
so
the
good.
best of the best. They are art.
Yeah.
And I don't know what triggered the impulse. We were talking about, I think, it was right before we were about to go to PAX Unplugged. That's why we were all together.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about PAX East and what we want to do for PAX East, especially like this was like right after lockdown and things opening back up. So we knew we want to submit for a panel, all that good stuff. So Harry was the one that brought up an idea of like, hey, E3 not really a thing anymore. Why don't we pitch an in-person indie game showcase? And we're like, oh, yeah, it's a great idea. Awesome. So the original showcase, the core concept of that was rooted in a PAX panel. Spoilers, PAX denied that panel. So
sure.
Who would have thought getting indie devs on stage to show off their game in front of people would be a not okay idea? No.
Wild.
So once we got that denial, like we had a backup plan in place of like just doing it as a digital show. And that's where that first proof of concept came to be. Me and Kyle always joke like behind the scenes, we can't go back and watch that first one. Very proud of it for what it was. It was literally this camera and then me and Kyle at my old job at the soundstage. Just, it took way too long to like that first showcase was under a half hour long and it took us like 5 hours to record like our lines and like get everything set up and stuff. It was rough
because we weren't smart enough to like actually think, oh, we should write a script or we should have an
improv.
actual run of show. Like there's so many times we had to redo the takes just because we kept messing up because we didn't have a solid idea of what we were going to say or intro the games. And that was a big learning experience that we took to the other ones,
I mean, that entire first go at it was a major learning experience. That we knew like we have a very high standard with production. We have a very high standard of like how we want things to look and feel and the audience interaction with it and the audience reception with it. I think a real big reason of why we want to go a little more the DIY route, well, A, money, because we don't have that ever.
Right.
But B, we wanted to see if people would actually watch and care and engage with it. And we were floored that people actually cared and watched and like laughed with our dumb jokes and loved the improv thing of a pigeon skeleton, which now is just like our mascot.
Yeah.
So yeah, after that first show, like right after we were done with PAX East, we sat down and we're like, okay, what does this realistically look like? I like to call that first one like showcase number 0. And that's where the March 2023 one really came into play, where we filmed it at our friend Alex's place, Brookland. I'm friends with this incredible individual named Marcus. He has a production company, and that's like the production company we've used since then. He does remarkable stuff. We've learned to write scripts ahead of time. We've learned to use teleprompters.
And going back to what we mentioned earlier with like the number of submissions, that first showcase, the games we showed were the only games that submitted,
and that we like clawed for and like asked for.
So to like,
of course,
fast forward to this upcoming showcase, which we've said it publicly, right? The number
I could go through the progression. So like that first one was we showed 18 games because we got 18 games. Second show when we opened up submissions, I believe the total number of submissions were around 500 for that March show. So already bonkers. From March to August 2023, that jumped to 700. Last March 2024 was what we just said, that 993, but really 1,000. And no, this is the first time we're going to say it publicly. No, we said it publicly.
Yeah, you tweeted it out. That's why
I did. Yeah. For this show that we just finished vetting for, and we're currently working on the confirmations, the total number of submissions were 1,208.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that goes back to like, we have to take that number and narrow it down to, we always try to float around the 40-ish games number, because we've watched showcases our entire lives. We still watch showcases. We know that point of like exhaustion and kind of losing focus. We want to make sure that we're producing a well-paced show, and we want to make sure that games don't end up like stepping on each other's toes. That like by the time you get to game number 83, you forgot about game number 15. As much as it breaks my heart to send out 1,000+ emails saying sorry you weren't selected, it's bonkers.
I mean, at least you send out emails saying so. I'm sure other people just don't respond. So the fact that you respond is, I think, really heartening to hear too.
Yeah. Being in PR by day, both me and Kyle work in PR by day.
Right.
We know what it's like to just be left hanging. And that's an awful feeling. Like, at least like we want to provide that assurance that like, hey, we recognize your submission. It sincerely has nothing to do with the quality of the game or our thoughts on the game. It's just overwhelming.
You are only so many people, and there is only so much time in what's going on. And you're absolutely right in that, yeah, if you showed every single game that you wanted to showcase out of those 1,208 games, everyone would be forgetting about it. Everyone would be falling apart on it. It's almost like a compressed convention experience. I mean, even going to 4 days of a weekend convention, you play enough games, you do enough things. The off the top of my head anecdote was Animal Well came out in May and has become one of my favorite games of the year. And I played it at PAX West last year. And before it came out, if you had asked me what the game was called, gun to my head, I would have failed.
Yeah.
I played it. I loved it. I forgot the name of it by the time I walked away from the booth because it was day 3 and I was so punchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even people in their own home just watching the showcases, it's that same feeling. And so you both have to kind of, and the rest of the team, have to go through that entire process for us on top of it. So it's a remarkable thing.
And just really quickly on that feeling of being super excited to finally play the game that you played at a convention. Going back to our very first showcase, the first game we showed was Lucid. And then being at PAX East this past year, we had the world premiere for it. And then hearing everyone call it their gamer show and loving what they played, like, hell yes. That was such a
how vindicating.
Such a prideful moment for us. Sure. We're a small footnote in Lucid's like journey, I guess.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
In that sort of jump of submissions that you got, I mean, you guys might have a better insight into it, so I'd love to know. Do you think some of it was the small number was just the idea of, well, this is an untested showcase, and how many of us out there, especially in the gaming space, like, hey, you know, it'd be cool. Hey, you know what I want to do? Hey, you know, what is impossibilities? And I mean, when you said 18 and then the next one, I did not expect that big of a jump. I figured, okay, some people heard about you. But do you think it was more that or more of, oh no, these guys are solid and this will happen?
I definitely think it's a bit of column A, column B of waiting to see. When you hear of like an unknown thing happening, you kind of want to see the finished quality first and see if it's up to standard. So I definitely feel like once we got the first one out and they realized that we were super genuine with it and we stayed true to our word of no barriers, we're not charging the devs anything for submitting or showing their stuff. And then obviously word got out, and then every single show we keep saying it over and over again. We feel like we're taking the next steps in production and just really showcasing the games and supporting them outside of the showcase, which is something I feel like a lot of other showcases and outlets that do those don't do as well as we do, by making sure like all the games information is like on our website. We have trailers also on our YouTube channel to link to all the official pages and whatnot. And we take a lot of pride in putting more effort into just, okay, we have your game trailer, we're going to show it.
Yeah, even the process, like once everybody's confirmed and like, let's say, Matt, you submitted your game, you're in, congratulations, you're going to open up the show. From day one, we always encourage folks like, hey, we are genuinely around if you need any help, any feedback, you need me to grab some screenshots for you, you need me to do this, you need me to do that. Like, we try to be an additional tool, because the last thing we want to do is add more stress to the development process. We don't want to be a reason for crunch. So if there's anything we could do to alleviate that issue, awesome. And I think, like Kyle was saying, that authenticity both on camera and off camera definitely helped in that. Like, of course, we're not the only people that do like previews or like an article or anything. Well, actually, I feel like not many people do hands-on previews, but we're not the only people that publish like an article and do like a post show and do interviews and stuff. But I think it is like what helps separate us from the pack is that genuine authenticity that we present on camera and just behind the scenes and just through all the messaging.
Yeah. Just knowing the goofy jokes that happen on screen, that's us in real life. Like that.
Oh yeah, I know. I spent enough times with you.
Mike hits me all the time in real life. So like when he hits me in the showcase, that's true.
Exactly.
Yeah, and like the zero barriers thing, like no matter how big we get, I don't care how much money you offer us or anything like that. That's not going to buy you a spot on the show. Like our show is not a spot for sponsored slots in a showcase. I think like us sticking to our guns with that also helps quite a bit.
Well, and I think this is actually a really good moment. We sort of just jumped into this with this episode and like we all know each other, but what are some of the criteria of submissions that an indie game has for the showcase? What are some of the ideas behind it?
We definitely prioritize games that haven't had that shot yet, that haven't been part of another showcase. It's okay if they have been, especially now that we work in games PR beforehand. Like when we did those, at least for me personally, not realizing just how expensive other showcases are and to get their games in there, it's a huge fight. Now the working in it, I understand that process and understanding just how hard it is to get accepted into one of these. So we definitely want to make sure like smaller teams or games that haven't had the proper chance to show off their babies, everything that they've sacrificed their time with their families, just free time, whatever, to make this for us to play. Those are like what I look out for and what we all look out for when we want to find games.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a requirement or anything like that, but like that's kind of like what we tend to favor. And especially when we are talking about 40 games out of 1,200, for example, like those are what's going to make those like last minute decisions. Like this round, for example, we went from the 1,200 and then almost every week throughout July, we would sit down and go through like a few hundred at a time. We eventually got it down to, I think we did actually pretty good for the first round. I think we got it down
close
to
like 100.
100, yeah. So from that 100, we had to go down to the 40. So that's where you get into the weeds of like, okay, has this game been shown in another showcase before? Are they looking to do something interesting in our show? Like, what's the dev size team? Do they have a publisher attached to them? Like some of the granular stuff like that. Like the submission process itself, no barriers, like there's no requirements, anything like that. But when you start getting into the weeds and like you start talking about these numbers, that's the stuff that we start to kind of like be a little picky about.
I have to imagine going through that many games, first of all, it must feel like a haze after a while.
Oh, yeah.
Remembering what title of what game by which developer. But I'm curious, there must be for each showcase a standout, like you see this game and you go, oh, this is number one.
Yeah.
And like I imagine like with Lucid, which I've now had a chance to play and talk to Eric, who I adore, who is just the sweetest.
God, he's the best.
I mean,
so cool.
He's the best
screw
of
you,
us.
Eric. Do you hear me? Screw you, Eric. Your britches are too big. No, I can't wait for Lucid. But like Lucid is one of those games where like I watched Geoff play it in person when we did our hands-on and like watched Geoff just disappear.
Glee.
That kind of reaction. And so I have to imagine that when you are going through these trailers, there are some games that you look at and go, oh damn, this is the thing. This is the one. Is there a specific game you're particularly proud of besides Lucid? Obviously, we sang those phrases that you looked at and went, this is going to be huge, and then it went on to, as you predicted, be huge.
Lucid's the easy one.
Yeah.
I think Squirrel with a Gun is up there.
Yep.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Just personally, it hasn't released yet or whatever, but from March's showcase, when we first laid eyes on Nectarmancer,
yeah,
we were like, oh my God, we have to show this off. Like, it looks too pretty to not have it be part of the showcase.
Again, not out yet. Secret of Crystal Mountain, I think, is going to be massive when that drops.
Nice.
Am I looking at the list of our previous alumni? Yeah, you bet.
It is kind of hard to
Oh,
remember.
I'm sure that's not in your head. It's like
You're checking your notes. You're a professional.
yeah, exactly.
Slay the Princess was pretty damn big.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Slay the Princess,
Yeah.
seeing that in person, one of my proudest recommendations was seeing that in person at East. It was you and Geoff couldn't go. And on the train ride back, I messaged Geoff because I found out that same demo I played was now on Steam and went, Geoff, play this, no questions. And then Geoff responded like hours later going, Oh my God. It was one of those, like, obviously the buzz was at East and around that time, but like to be able to do that to my own co-host, and we've gone on to love and get to play the game and get codes for it and really adore it. Like, they must feel like your children a little bit, right?
They
I
do.
get that feeling just
I mean,
tangentially.
even this past year or this past month at SGF, seeing Phoenix Springs pop up.
I was just about to bring that up.
With Day of the Devs. Phoenix Springs was another one. As soon as we saw it, we're like, oh, this is going to be massive. This could be something
And
really
to see
special.
it in the same room of like, oh, there's Stalker 2 right next door to it.
Yeah.
It was wild to see it. And it was, again, that like pride
It's
feeling.
pride.
Yeah, it was very, very cool.
Yeah. Now, with that in mind, like you mentioned Day of the Devs, and you've also got things like Steam Next Fest and all of these other sort of long form, but still short periods of time where these things can go up, go on display, whatever else. How does the timing of those or the spacing that they allow for other games or other groups, how does that factor into a lot of what you guys decide and what you put on?
So I will say all of the indie shows, like I like to consider it like the family of the indie scene, like the Mix, Day of the Devs, Glitch, Wholesome, like bangers, women-led games, Latin American Game Showcase. Games for Games. Those are like our inspiration. Like I love that group of indie showcases. They all put on stellar shows. We wouldn't exist, or we wouldn't be doing it without folks like that. As far as like what kind of affects our decisions and whatnot, the biggest thing, and this is a new thing for September, this upcoming showcase is the first time we're not going to be tied to PAX. So when we started doing the shows, originally there was not another showcase tied to a PAX. We were kind of the first ones to do that.
Right.
Since then, PAX and GDC decided to happen at the same time. Granted, that is a Reed Pop decision. GDC always happens at the same time. So because of that, the Mix does their GDC show. And then like I've had conversations with Justin behind the scenes of like, we just accidentally end up overlapping and we never mean to overlap. So we're like, yo, we got to like try to coordinate a little better next time.
Because at the end of the day, everyone that does the showcase just wants to show off.
We just want to show off games. Like we don't consider it a competition or anything. Like honestly,
no.
Just to tease something for this upcoming one, we're trying to make a conscious effort to make it more of a collaborative effort throughout the scene. I'll leave it at that.
Awesome.
Ooh, scoops.
But yeah, scoops. So yeah, like when the Mix do their GDC show, like when PAX is happening at the same time as GDC, like we end up clashing a little bit. And then of course the big one around PAXs are the future game showcases. Obviously they have a hefty pocket in terms of like ad spend and being able to throw out some chunk of change for promotion and whatnot. So we decided that we're at the point where we could kind of carve out our own space and like choose a weekend where there is really nothing else happening. And you mentioned Steam Next Fest. Steam festivals are a big part of that as well. The weekend of September 19th, there is no other Steam event happening at the moment. So our next big goal and something we're actively working towards and talking to Valve about is having a Steam event for the 601 Indie Showcase moving forward.
Love that.
And a big reason it hasn't happened before is because when we tied ourselves around PAX, there is the PAX Steam feature. There is the Future Game Show Steam feature. Yeah. There is a GDC Steam feature. There may be a Gamescom Steam feature still happening when West is happening. So with that September 19th date, there's nothing else happening that weekend. So we get to kind of carve our own path. Moving forward, it seems like we're going to respectfully stray away from the PAXs and the major events and just kind of find our own time. And thank God we decided to not do one in June because like it's just it's just too overwhelming.
Also with East moving to May next year is kind of forces our hand as well.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we're not a news show. For our Patreon, we do the typical video game podcast of what have you been playing? We do that as a bonus because the main show doesn't do that. But even when Geoff and I in June did our Patreon episode and we loosely followed everything and we're journalists in the loosest terms, we were overwhelmed just by like the 5 things we were talking about. So like I can't even imagine.
Yeah, no, transparency listeners, this is July 18th that we're recording this. I'm still recovering from June.
Imagine being there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, and I have the least reason to be tired from it on this call right now. So
let me tell whoever decided to have all the events during SGF in LA so spaced out from each other needs to have a certain talking to, because I don't understand.
I don't think it was one person. I think that's the problem.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's totally fair.
Yeah. If only there was a singular entity around that time that could organize all of that. It's just crazy.
Wild.
Wild.
Look, from my perspective as someone who just enjoys these things and doesn't make them on that scale, like it's astonishing the work that you guys do.
Thanks,
and
man.
I've always been impressed. And I mean, it's funny, like when we came back from East, I can't remember who it was, but I had posted one of the group photos and someone DM'd me. It was like, you know the 6-1 Indie guys? That's dope. And I was like, yeah, I do.
I gotta say,
that's
like,
right.
It's always especially because we tied it with PAXs and stuff. I cannot tell you how unbelievably weird it is to get stopped by a stranger or a PAX fan who is online of like, oh my God, I watched the show. This game was great. It's like, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Wow.
Weird.
For work, I was in another Discord to do some work-related things. There was a game dev in there who saw me post something. It was like, "Oh my God, it's Kyle from 6-1 Indie." I go, it blew my mind. Like that. I don't know if I'll ever fully be okay with that or fully comprehend that kind of recognition. It's very weird
Because imposter syndrome is at its maximum
all the time. It doesn't go away
all the time. Anxiety, imposter syndrome. We still don't know what we're doing. It may appear. You can't imagine the fires that happen in the months leading up to the Showtime day. Like it's
like, again, peel back the curtain a little bit for some of the earlier ones. I feel like we have a good handle on it now, Mike. But when when we were doing the shows before PAX East, and Mike is on a train pushing the website live on an Amtrak because timing didn't work out, or
for that Amtrak Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
That Wi-Fi, oof. It's good when it hits, but it does not hit often.
Exactly.
I guess it was it must have been the last PAX West one. My flight got heavily delayed. I planned the flight timing so I would land in Seattle 2 hours before the showcase. The plane was missing a part. A part had to get flown in from Georgia to Raleigh. I got delayed like 6 hours. I did all the work. Thank God for Delta's Wi-Fi. I did all the work on the airplane, and I was able to monitor chat and hang out and all that kind of stuff. But like, yeah, it's like no matter what, something happens. This past one, for the first time, me and Kyle were in the hotel room together.
No, we weren't.
Oh, my apologies.
My train, I picked the wrong train, and I arrived in Boston in the middle of the show. So I watched it at the train station. Like, we planned it. We were going to be together and watch it for the first time. Nope. Maybe next time. I don't know.
Slight reframing. I was prepared for the first time and settled into the hotel room and able to like get things done. I'm gonna have anxiety for this next one because the day it's landing on, I'm gonna be at a music festival. So we'll see.
That reminds me, though, the watching part of it. So for this most recent one, and I think you guys have done this before, but like mutual friend of the show, CG Danny B, was one of the, like, I don't know what you call it, like featured streamers. So was Jacob, a few other folks. Like, is that something that's a recent thought, or from the beginning you're like, we want to get streamers in on this too, we want to make this a community thing? Like, I know 6-1 Indie's always been a community thing, but I'm curious, like with the showcases specifically, was that always a plan too? And do you want someone to maybe do it in September? I'm not talking about anyone in particular, but you know.
Yes.
Personally, one of my favorite things about doing this, because I love doing it just as a fan, I love watching people react to showcases. Yeah. So to have people react to ours is awesome. And that's kind of how I don't want to say we found, but we became friends with CG Danny B. Because
we discovered him. We found him.
Yeah, he's big because of you.
He live reacted to, I forgot what show it was, and Mike and I were watching it together at one of the PAXs. They were like, "How the hell did he know this game? We thought we found something that nobody would know of," and it became a goal for the next one or the next two to stump Danny. And this past one, we're like, okay, there's got to be at least one maybe that he might know. He still knew more than one, but like that's always a goal. But yes, I love
somehow this man knew Forge of the Fae.
Yeah, no, we got that from a Twitter page.
That hasn't been shown anywhere.
No trailer, no footage anywhere, and he knew it.
What are his sources?
We
We love people live reacting, and anyone who wants to do it.
So yes, Matt,
please.
So a part of that, we have been, I will say, redefining it each show. So
course.
The first time we really did, like, we just did, like, this is before, like, me and Kyle even worked in PR. Like, we did what we thought PR was initially. Stuff, just finding a bunch of people who, like, tend to live react to shows and just, like, send out an email blast through MailChimp, be like, hey, this is happening on Wednesday, the whatever, at 12 p.m. We'll love to get your live reactions, blah, 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 blah. And since, like, with those passes, like, people have live reacted it. And, like Kyle was saying, that's how we found Danny and some other folks. Since then, we've been taking it way more seriously, especially now that we have PR experience. Like top tier media sites, for example, like your IGNs, your Game Informers, your Bleeding Cools, your, you know, all these folks, GameSpots, as well as some of our friends. So like Danny, Jacob, you guys in September, plus some more top tier streamers who tend to do live reacting stuff. We do offer them a private link to the showcase a week ahead of time, so they could just watch it and pre-record whatever on their own time. Because we know, like, not everybody's going to be able to watch the premiere, especially this next one is a Thursday at noon, I think.
Right.
So yeah, we like to give people kind of a heads up. We give you just like a private Vimeo link and go on and watch it. And as long as we trust you with the embargo, typically it's our friends that we trust with the embargo. Like, hey, just go ahead. Just as long as you publish it after it airs or like while it's airing, go for it.
Remember last year, Mike, where Starfield took our day and we had to switch last minute?
We'll get back to that in a second. So along with that, with media folks specifically, we prepare like an entire doc of like, hey, here's the game. Here are the details about the game. Here are all the links. Here is what the exclusive is. Yes, we have an interview. Here's the unlisted link to the interview as well. Here's the press kit, everything that they need to know. So like we kind of, and I think that's what also separates us from the pack a little bit as well. We do PR outreach for all of our games. Like we make sure like we do outreach and like PR work for the showcase itself, of course, but leading up to it, we make sure that we put the games forward and that we are actually doing PR outreach for the games.
That's amazing. Love that.
And yeah, goddamn Starfield taking out our PAX West spot. That was a nightmare.
That was
Did you
all
have,
hands
and
on
you had
deck.
to change it last minute?
We changed the last minute. We went a day before. Yeah, we had to go a day before.
Yeah, because they announced that's when the embargo went live, and we thought that no one would live react to it or watch it because they were either watching reviews or getting ready to play. So we were like, we have to move.
Which our instinct ended up being somewhat correct. So like it worked out really well for that. So this was last PAX West, where it was going to be us leading into Dames for Games, leading into the mix. So it was like back to back to back bangers. And we're like,
yeah.
We were talking internally, like with everybody, like, hey, we're going to make this a big indie day. It's going to be like kick off to PAX West, all that good stuff. And yeah, the Starfield embargo was 12 p.m. Eastern, which is our usual time slot. And we're like, no way in hell. Absolutely not. Nope. So yeah, we made the quick call of like, just move it forward today. And thankfully, it seems like that was the correct call, especially with like the discussion around Starfield at the time where it wasn't like glowing, it was divisive. So which is even worse for
because
trying to break so much static.
Yeah. I have to imagine that every time you've done one, since it's still relatively a new thing in the pantheon of doing them, that every time you do it, you still find another thing to tweak or something that you could fix for next time.
These things are never done.
Are you ever surprised by those tweaks, or is it always the obvious thing like, oh, of course we didn't do this, but we'll do this next time?
I'll bring up one that Mike opposed me on for a while. Last show we did a pre-show, and Mike was adamant against pre-shows because notoriously pre-shows aren't utilized the best. Like I'm thinking of Game Awards where it is a lot of fluff, and unfortunately they put indies in where people are expecting to go to the main show when it starts and they miss out on the pre-show.
Right.
So to actually craft a pre-show where it was equally as good as the main show, just a smaller time and of games that were already out as a way to still showcase games that might be overlooked, I thought went really well. And I'm happy to report that Mike admits that he was wrong about it. So we're good.
Amazing.
Yeah. I think that's a great way of looking at it with games that are already out. I mean, how many of us, there's so many indie games.
Yeah, exactly.
Even all the numbers we've been throwing around here, certainly we come with the thesis of every game is potentially someone's favorite. Every day is a new 100%. Day to discover a game new to you. So
and for the March showcase, one of the games in the pre-show, Hailing from the Abyss, recently came out beforehand, and it turns out it was made by a 18-year-old kid in Japan And when we interviewed him, he was like, South Korea, thank you. When we interviewed him, he was like, "Oh, could I put you guys down as a reference for my college application and use this interview for all that?" And I'm like, "That's the sweetest wild." But like amazing. To be able to showcase a game that was already out based on our parameters of wanting to show upcoming things, and then being able to throw a pre-show in there that wasn't second billing, it was equally as supportive and uplifting, was awesome.
Yeah, like, well, two things. Kyle, I don't know if I told you, he wants us to write a letter of recommendation for him.
Oh, cool.
Secondly, we got that email last week. Secondly, I think that was my big hesitation against it, of like, traditionally nobody cares about the pre-show, so how are we going to do it? But like, when Kyle pressed me on it, it made a click of like, oh, that's the reason we're doing this, is to change the mindset and like have people actually care. So going into the pre-show, we're like, okay, we're going to make sure we actually market this thing. We're going to make sure that we tell people like, hey, 11:50 a.m. this is when the pre-show starts. You better watch it. It's going to be really good. It features 6 games that are recently released that may have flown under your radar. And I think that was a big thing also, like finding the theme of the pre-show. Like, I think it would have been unfair, because the way I was thinking about the pre-show was like, okay, it's an excuse to feature more upcoming games and another countdown. Yeah. But like, now that we found that theme of like, oh, we could highlight a handful of recently released games that may have flown under the radar. That's perfect.
Also, selfishly,
it's also a pigeon pun.
Exactly. To use Petey the pigeon more and not have it just be a background character. Yeah.
I mean, vital character to the 6-1 indie brand, Petey the pigeon, the lore.
It's outside of the parameters of what the showcase is doing, but it's still very much within the ethos of what 6-1 is doing.
Yeah.
So, which includes Petey.
Yeah.
Of course.
Another thing that we learned from doing this early on, again, we mentioned how the first show we didn't have a script or whatever, is writing a script and how beneficial that was. And then not even just writing it, but then sharing it with the devs to make sure all the information is correct. Because there were a couple of mistakes in the first one. We'll admit it.
Yeah. I may have said a game was out today, and it wasn't. And it hasn't launched really yet.
Oh no, I was about to be like, well, is it out now?
It's in early access.
There you go. Yeah, totally fine.
Yeah, but there's always something that we pick up on. Like, okay, we can do a little bit better. And
it's something we keep saying also, like, we never want to stay still. We never want to like truly get comfortable. So like, again, I teased a little bit earlier about like a collaboration kind of thing. So like, that's something new we want to like kind of try to implement a little bit, and we'll see how people react to it. Cause we're getting to the point where like, yes, it's called the 6-1 Indie Showcase, but the games are the stars. It's a lot bigger than us. Like we're here to make dumb jokes and make sure the flow is okay from segment to segment. That's about it.
Another small thing that I love that we did early on, and unfortunately it hasn't lined up where we can do it again, shooting these and highlighting local game places. Like in New York, we went to our friend's Alex gaming bar, esports bar, Brookland, and then we went to Wonderville, which houses
Wonderville. I was about to say, like,
Wonderville's awesome. It's just another way where we can showcase local gaming communities in the showcase. And what we did for Wonderville is we made a shirt, and all the profits went to Wonderville. Just make sure they can continue to do what they do. Like, we're all about supporting the smaller guys, whether it's games or the actual locations where we're shooting. That's something we pride ourselves on as well.
Y'all want to hear about one of these fires, by the way. So last March, I had to take an emergency trip back up to New York. So this was back in January. We typically film these things like at least a month to 2 months ahead of time, like maybe a month and a half. So I'm back in New York. We kind of time it in a way where like I just bought a one-way ticket, and then we were going to film like the first weekend of February back at Wonderville. And that was like the only time Wonderville had available. We're like, cool, great. Can't wait to be back with you guys. Kyle gets real sick that like the week before, I think. But it was like enough time where we're like, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I can bounce back. Yeah.
Man, this man was on death's door for a solid 2 weeks. So we had to make the audible of like, we couldn't film that weekend. Well, we decided on that weekend, we got everything confirmed and stuff, that because we got everything confirmed and whatnot, I booked my trip back home to Raleigh for the weekend after. So like, there weren't many options. Our production crew only available on the weekend. So Wonderville couldn't push the following weekend. So we're like, oh my God, what the hell are we going to do?
And to be clear, I told Mike, film it without me. If it's
And
gonna
I
mess
said
it up,
no.
just go.
I said, there's no way in hell I'm doing this alone and without you. Not even for the fact of like, I don't want to do this without Kyle. He's my partner in crime. He's my soulmate. I love this man to death. I want him arm in arm with me so I can make dumb jokes and he could do that Eglins best joke and stuff like that. But that would also require rewriting the entire script to make sense for one person. No, not with a couple of days to spare. So my background is in audio engineering, and before I got into PR, I worked a lot in the film industry. So I have like film connections and whatnot. So I texted a couple friends. I was like, hey, any chance you got a space available? They're like, yeah, maybe for like $3,000 is probably what you could get. I was like, cool, never mind. We're good.
Forget it.
But thankfully, it just like browsing through like sites like PeerSpace, and I forgot what the site we actually used, but PeerSpace is the popular one. Like we found that spot that we filmed at. It was like, I think $50 an hour or something like that. So we booked it for 4 hours.
And let me tell you, the outside looked like a Marvel villain's lair.
We thought we were going to get mugged. We thought we were going to get mugged.
Like picture like Daredevil and where the hand is. That's what it was. Like some fish market like warehouse.
Why do you think it was so cheap?
Sketch.
Exactly.
Which fits our vibe.
Yeah. Even when we filmed, I was still under the weather, so I filmed with a double ear infection. So I could like barely hear anything while we were filming. And you can progressively tell throughout the show.
You're like
how
getting
I was
worse
feeling.
as the show goes on.
Just by the angle of how you're standing.
Well, this one went so quick because again we have the cadence down and we shot in order, so you can actually tell in this one like I was feeling great at the beginning, the meds were working great, and then slowly going down.
Because there were previous times where we for whatever reason didn't film in order.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Got a thing to do. I mean, well, you did mention your very first showcase. It took you about 5 hours to get it down to about, what you were doing. How much faster are you these days? Or do you not want to put that on the record?
No, we can. Listen, we're open books as far as we can tell. The only thing we're not going to tell you about is the games that we're showing for the next one.
Yeah.
Obviously.
So we had it booked from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. on that day. Production crew got stuck in traffic and I promised them dinner beforehand. So we didn't get into the venue until 6, like loaded in and like all the gear
Close
set up
to
and whatnot.
6:30.
Probably 6:30.
Yeah.
Everything was set up at 7 o'clock. So we had until 9 o'clock. So everything was set up at 7 o'clock.
5 to 9. 4.
We knocked out our lines and whatnot from 7 to 8 p.m. And then we broke down, we filmed the little pre-show static shots with PD just so PD himself could do his voiceover afterwards in post.
Of course.
And then, quickly broke down 7 to 8 p.m. And then, we were out. So, like, as far as our part goes, we knocked it out in an hour.
That's amazing.
It was the first time where we had a couple takes where it was the first try.
And we just did it.
And we're just like, all right, it's good enough. Let's go.
That's got to feel good.
It feels great.
And another kind of like lesson learned and another tweak, as much as I love like filming it at Brookland because it's like a more organic space, same with like Wonderville. With Brookland, you'll notice a reason that we did it. Well, one of the reasons we did it out of order was because we wanted to show off multiple spots. So like we would set up in one portion and be like, okay, let's film scene 1, 5, 7 here. So we could kind of like jump around and there's like a little bit of variety.
Everything at this position.
Exactly. With Brookland, because Alec is a friend, he just let us in before business hours. Once the doors opened at 2 o'clock, well, first off, behind the scenes, they had a setup for a Smash Brothers tournament. And then once the business is open, we still had filming to do. We just relegated to going outside. And of course, when you go outside, you're dealing with the public, you're dealing with cars, you're dealing with sirens.
New York City traffic, baby.
So that took a lot longer and obviously made the post-production process a little more difficult. With the previous one, with Wonderville, great, but every few minutes the J train would roll on by and you could hear it quite loud.
So when we did our takes, we had to speed it up a little bit because we knew the train was going to come back at any moment.
Check the MTA app.
Exactly.
And again, a business that was like about to open, and like right as we were doing like our final take, we were like just about to make it. We just blew the fuse for the entire building. Like all power went out. So another fun lesson learned and something we're going to tweak. As much as I love showing off these places, renting a private space where you could kind of control as much as you possibly can is quite nice. And it was really nice to just knock it out in like an hour.
I'm not saying we'll never go back to another place like that, but
yeah, you got to weigh it out.
Yeah.
Cost versus cool versus sanity.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So having showcase professionals on our show, I do want to get your take on like the nature of showcases now. Because when you guys first started doing this, we were still kind of this ebb and flow where some people were doing showcases. They were somewhere around a certain time. Nintendo did whatever the hell they wanted,
as usual.
They're in their own universe, which is fine. But like now, by the time you did the one this year, it's like this is the world we live in. It's all showcases all the time. Geoff, not this Geoff, the other Geoff, who spells it the same way though.
The proper way.
The only Geoff.
The only Geoff. Now took over that space and maybe is doing a good job, maybe not. That's not for us to say, but it's a different landscape now. You're doing showcases in a sea of showcases. And how do you feel about that as people who play games and as people who make showcases? Because as someone who just podcasts and some asshole with a microphone, it does feel like a lot. And like Geoff and I, again, we mostly are lucky enough and are small enough that we can cover what we want. There's no agenda. We cover the showcases we care about. If it's a showcase we don't care about or they're games that we're not interested in, we don't really talk about them unless there's something we want to like grapple onto. But as folks who are in PR, making your own showcases and also occasionally enjoy a video game to play, it must feel like even more to you of this kind of overwhelm because now everybody has one.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to the indie scene family. Like, I still think though that those core folks are doing such a stellar job, and like they continue, like similar with us, they continue to evolve and like put on better and better shows, just upping the quality in terms of like their own productions and the games that they're showing off. And like those OGs, like, love them to death. I'm so grateful they're still around and still able to like break through in, like you were saying, this new kind of like landscape. Yeah, I really appreciate the ambition, I will say, of other folks like trying to start things up. Like Best Indie Games, Clemmy, he just put on a show. Obviously there's like the OTK showcase, but I still feel like that core group, including us included, we really understands the formula. And I think it is like that formula, that genuine nature, that we're not treating it like a piece of content. We're not treating it as a paycheck. We're not treating it as a job, a duty that we have to do. It's just, we're doing it because we want to show off cool games and put games in the best light. I think that's why shows like all those I just mentioned do break through the noise quite a bit. That said, yes, it's overwhelming and it does not force us, but I guess encourage us to do like these little pivots in terms of like moving away from PAX and like just trying to carve out our own space. The more collaboration thing that I was kind of mentioning, doing things like the pre-show and like our own take on a pre-show, making sure that we are being true to our word when we say zero barriers. We're never going to ask for a cent. We're here to support you from day one. When I send you the congratulations, you've been selected email to showcase day and beyond that, doing that authentic PR outreach because we want to, even with the PR outreach. And like, God bless our partners with Vicarious now, because like we work for Vicarious PR. That's our day job. They approached us. They're like, hey, we really believe in what you guys are doing. Let's partner up. Like, and even with them, this next showcase is going to be the full force of Vicarious PR pushing the games for no additional cost. They're not asking the devs for anything as well.
Awesome.
It's things like that we have to keep it on to put it lightly, I guess. The fear, I will say, is like I fear that we will get to a breaking point of true burnout. And I think we got pretty damn close. If not, we probably did hit it in June. So I think that's where we really do have to pick and choose our battles. You really have to choose when you want to talk and when you shouldn't talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to add to that wonderful answer, Mike. Jeez.
Yeah, wow.
Ad-lib, baby.
I just love showcases in general. So the fact that we are a part of that and offering that for people is awesome. But like Mike was mentioning, like we have to make sure that it's not during a time that's going to be overwhelming, because we do want to respect everyone's time. Because it's, especially for those that are going to report on it, like you guys as podcasters or media or whatever, it can't be a 2-hour show because that's a lot to cover. I feel like another like big thing that we're doing is like it's got to be as close under an hour as we can get it, because if it's too long, then it's just going to feel like all the other ones. More games will then bury some of the early ones that we show off. Yeah. So I think we have the good sweet spot. Again, I just love that we're doing the showcase thing, and it's
nice to be a part of the zeitgeist.
Yeah, as long as we find that time where it's not going to get overshadowed by another showcase, because it's part of like Mike was mentioning, once they sign on and they confirm, they're like part of the team, and we would make sure that they shine as much as possible.
Yeah, another like behind the scenes thing, like something we started doing, we set up a private Discord server just for all the devs to hang out and like just so they have like not only instant access to ask us questions and like really have that back and forth collaboration, but just to also hang out with the other devs. So it feels like it is like a communal kind of like family thing of like, especially because like real talk, it's been a rough year plus for the industry between layoffs on the media side of things, between studio closures, between layoffs at studios, indies shutting down, indies really struggling to break through the noise, especially on days like May 9th, for example, where like it was banger. Guess what?
Yeah.
We are currently at the moment. We are currently at the moment in another week like that, like this week and next week, similar. And, you know, it breaks my heart when friends like Cut to Bits, Venture to the Vile has to shut down their studio just after putting out a stellar video game.
Yep.
I mentioned like we can't really treat this like a job or anything, but like twisting that definition of job, it is our job to help uplift those folks and support the folks so we could attempt to do our part to prevent those awful situations as much as we possibly can. And granted, we do have a small footprint within the industry and it is growing, sure, but when a random ass person in Boston comes up to me and says, yo, High Taunt to Seek looked dope. I can't wait to play it on the show floor today. We did the damn thing. As long as we get one wish list, one demo play, one person telling another friend about a game, that's what it's all about.
Yep.
And it's
damn right.
We always have to stay true to ourselves. We never want to do this for the clout. And like, I'm not going to name names. I think there are some productions that do, unfortunately, do it for the clout. None of which are included in the umbrella. I'm going to be totally clear. I love all my indie scene friends. I'm just going to put that out there.
Whoa, drama alert.
But yeah, it's just, again, it comes down to authenticity, being genuine, being kind, being human beings, being supportive.
Yeah.
Well, you were saying that like a lot of the folks in the family, people see those games, they get excited about it, they watch that because the love shows through.
Yeah.
If you're just reporting on a game, hitting the facts, people know. A lot of this, especially the indie space, the people who are looking to indie spaces, whether within the industry or out, we're all just looking for something to love.
Yeah.
And we connect on that. So I feel like that's one of those, you're absolutely right, Mike. This has been a fuck of a period of time for the industry.
Yeah.
And I don't know if love will save it, but it will certainly make it a more enjoyable time as we navigate the bog.
What really keeps me going are moments like, I don't know if, I'm assuming y'all have y'all had the experience of like going to a mix event, like the actual mix on-site event?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Walking into that room and then you just see people just like not only having the time of their lives, but like just connecting, talking, maybe meeting in person for the first time. This past one in LA, like walking into that room and then just people screaming like, oh shit, and just like coming up, giving us a big hug. And like, whether it is like a friend that I haven't seen in a while or a dev that we've maybe connected with online or a publishing partner we've been talking to or somebody like Justin or like whoever it may be, like it's moments like that are just like so special and like really encapsulate why we should all be doing this. And like personally why we do it, of course. It's just that sensation of like the industry as a whole it's obviously a big industry, but like when you think about it, it is a small industry. Everybody knows everybody. But like when you go on a more granular level within like the indie scene, it is a tight knit pack. It is really that family kind of vibe.
It's the punk scene.
It is the punk scene. It is the Warped Tour of the games industry.
It is the Warped Tour. Yeah. It's like it feels big, but it's not big. But it is. But it is.
And also like with the punk analog, like it truly does. We're all fighting for our lives. Like we have to fight against and to break through like your Star Wars, your Wukongs, your Assassin's Creed Shadows. Like again, nothing against AAA games or anything like that, but like clearly, like once October comes around, like nobody's gonna really give a shit about it. October indies, like that's just matter of fact. It sucks, and I hate that is the matter of fact. But like, God forbid you launch your game on October 25th, because Kyle, guess what comes out October 25th? Sonic X Shadow Generations, but also Call of Duty.
Yeah. I mean, who cares about Call of Duty? We're Sonic and Shadow stands here.
Oh no! Why am I here?
Yeah. Thank you for your service.
To balance things out.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. I think also the authenticity that you both talk about, I mean, one, it's why I've wanted to collaborate with you guys on this show so much, because we have a similar ideal, but also like the biggest complaint about the larger AAA showcases is they don't feel authentic. Like Nintendo has found their groove. And so for the most part, people identify with it, but also, like you said, like everyone remembers the AAA Nintendo frontline titles. I couldn't tell you a single title besides those that came out during that showcase because of how they structure it.
You can't list all 12 farming sims that they showed off? You can't list all the Square RPGs that got shown off?
Let me tell you about something I love so much, specifically like what PlayStation does. They'll just pick a random day and tweet out in an hour, hey, stay tuned to our Twitter feed for 8 exciting indies out of nowhere. Put that in a showcase.
Animal Well was announced on the PlayStation blog at 7 a.m. Eastern.
Yep.
Via tweet.
Like, again, you bring up...
I nearly bought the damn thing before I realized it was free on PS Plus day of.
Yeah, like, shout out to Nintendo because they do have the Nindies Spotlight, which I love, which is another big inspiration for us when we do it. I wish some of the other big publishers would also give indies the same amount of time and not only have one or two in the big showcases because, like you were saying, it feels disingenuous because it feels like they're just putting them in there as buffer between the big moments.
Yeah. Or paying lip service to the idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and it's like a lot of these showcases now become kind of sanitized. It's why Geoff has Geoff, the other Geoff, has gotten blowback also because, look, he's doing a job, and I get it, but also not talking about the layoffs, not talking about current events. I get why he doesn't, but also I can't always forgive why he doesn't.
It feels more bread and circus.
Like, that's not 6-1 Indies' job. It could be, but it's not. But Geoff Keighley is an industry leader. He is the industry leader, I'd say, in a lot of circles because he's a name that's known. I think also, like, a lot of complaints about the most recent SGF is like, oh yeah, like there was some stuff. Like, it feels like now that he is this Gamescom and the Game Awards, it's like there's not enough. And the reality that you're proving is there is enough. There's just not enough who will pay. And I think that's a huge thing that we're realizing now. And it's kind of a bummer. And I think these larger showcases, while I love a hype cycle too. A lot of people like to be, they're just an hour of commercials. Go outside and touch grass. Yeah, like, we're allowed to be excited.
We love video games at the end of the day. I want to champion video games.
Yeah. Fun fact, when the Nintendo Direct happened around SGF, which was like a week later, I was at my niece's graduation with terrible internet. And so I couldn't watch it. Friend of the show, Dave Jackson, messages me a DM on Discord going, Matt, you're never going to believe it. They're showing a brand new Mario and Luigi game. And I, as a Mario Luigi superfan who assumed the franchise was dead, it's my favorite RPG franchise in Nintendo, and I assumed it was dead because RIP Alpha Dream. And I was like, please don't F with me because I'm at my niece's graduation. This is not fair. And he's like, no, Matt, I'm serious.
It was the lead-off trailer.
And so, like, I love that stuff, and I want to watch commercials, and I want to be excited about games. But I think that now that E3 is gone, and now that one person owns like the major gaming events, it just feels like there is a lack of authenticity in the AAA space, with some exceptions. Whereas in the indie space, because of folks like you and Wholesome Games and so many others, the mix, I feel like that heart is still there. And Geoff is absolutely right. It's the punk scene because... So before getting into games podcasting and other stuff, I was part of the nerdcore community. You know, a lot of nerd rappers who I'm still friends with, folks like Megaran, Tribe One, Michael Kill, Shave Dark Lord. Like, that is what I equate the indie scene to. Like, a bunch of musicians who don't have a ton of reach, working together, touring together, and doing things together to lift each other up. Geoff and I always say, rising tide raises all ships.
Hell yeah.
Geoff and I are AAA game fans. We talk about AAA games, but we want to interview indie devs, not only because we like indie games a lot, but because, like, we had an incredible interview with the lead on Botany Manor. I have not seen anyone else interview her but us, and it was an incredible interview. And I'm not saying that to toot my horn. I'm saying it because now it's out there. Now other people might discover. I know personally 3 people who bought Botany Manor because, like, oh, that looks dope, Matt. Oh, this interview was great. Like that. Like, if I sell one video game by tweeting about it, and it's especially an indie game, I'm over the moon. Like, over the moon.
It's the real problem that we've been noticing. I think we've all been noticing where outlets and just people who play video games in general look at an indie and perceive it as less than the big games and not worth the time. And that is, I think, our biggest struggle in what we do in uplifting the indie devs, because these games are equally on the same level, or in some cases surpass the big AAA games in quality and narrative and visuals and just style. To have the overwhelming majority of people who play video games look at an indie like, oh, that's not worth my time. Like Tales of Kinzera Zao, granted they had the EA budget behind it, but like they just shut down That's an incredible game made by a small studio.
Yeah.
And it was, again, free on PS Plus, but not enough people played it or supported it, and it's gone. Like, that kind of stuff frustrates me.
And it's funny to bring up that conversation now, especially this week in particular. Strange Scaffold, Xavier Nessel Jr., his studio that he leads, somehow... Xavier, I'm going to repeat it here. I don't know how you sleep. I don't know how you eat. I don't know how you exist.
Oh my God.
Because you were putting out. This is Click Holding is the 4th of 5th video game you're putting out this year. Christ.
Yeah.
But with Click Holding is beginning a lot of press this week because it is a 40-minute experience that, like, and I forgot who exactly used this exact quote. It might have been somebody from Rock Paper Shotgun, somebody from PC Gamer, but saying that, like, more of this. Those 40 minutes are going to stick with me more than 100-hour RPGs. And, like, yes, we need to get that message out there of, like, just because something is something we like to say, like, bite-sized bangers or, like, short bangers, or, like, maybe it doesn't have, like, the most polished realistic graphics or, like, whatever it may be, doesn't mean it's any less impactful.
I don't want Crow Country to look perfect. I want it to look like Crow Country.
Crow Country's so good.
Speaking of the Reckoning that was May 9th releases.
Yeah. And if I may go back to some of that authenticity stuff and, like, talking about, like, the and this is not me trying to pick a fight with Geoff Keighley. I don't want an assassin to show up at my house. This is a home. So something that, like, a few individuals, and I'm not going to name names, how we're talking about behind the scenes during the SGF show. So, like, I forgot what the game was. It might have been the Outer Sloth announcement with, like, that whole partnership with
awesome.
Click Holding is a part of that, which is great. Once that segment ended, I'll never forget. It was like Geoff came out, not this Geoff, Keighley came out and said, like, wow, looks great, right? Anyways, here's Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I was slashing heads and stuff like that. And it's like, sure, you are literally putting an indie on stage, and you are literally putting Victoria Tran on stage to talk about this incredible initiative. But you gotta sell it a little bit, buddy. You gotta seem excited about it, because if you don't seem excited about it, why is your passionate viewership going to give a shit?
They'll know when you're faking it, Geoff.
Exactly. And again, that goes back to how we like to handle that authenticity. Like, one of my most heartbreaking things and heartbreaking mistakes of the last showcase, and it's probably gonna be my biggest regret in our history of doing showcases, I accidentally cut an ACAB joke out of the last show. And, like, I want to make sure.
So mad when you told me about
I know.
that.
I want to make sure that, like, we are keeping, like, that spirit of, like, it is us. We are indie game fans, and that's why we're doing this. And, like, we're not gonna censor ourselves or anything like that. I'm not saying, like, cussing about it and the course of an hour or whatever, but, like, things like that of, like, we're gonna be ourselves, we're gonna be genuine, like, we're putting our hearts on our sleeves in front of this lens.
Personally, I would probably, if I had a showcase, it would be mostly cursing.
I know. I try my best to not.
My curse is like a sailor in real life, but
I really do.
You know, on showcases, none of that.
Now that I got out of education, I curse all the time.
Oh my God. I worked with kids, like, as my day job for so much. Like, I still probably have an ironclad, like, switch somewhere in my body that
1000%
is like,
I do.
Gee Willikers, oh dear, that's all fine. And then fuckward after fuckward.
Listen, when Mike gets his medicine in him, you know, the things go off the rails.
Your gamer fuel.
I'm so glad you brought up Click Holding and Olivier Nelson Jr., who is a lunatic in the best way. That's my new goal, is to get him to do a side quest. I haven't even made an ask yet, but that's like my new next tier. But
may I interrupt you, like, real briefly while we're talking about Xalavier? This lunatic is the reason, like, he is the shining example of, like, legitimacy within the indie scene, and, like, the gold standard of what, like, indies could do if people gave a shit. This man is producing a film based on one of his original IPs with Lakeith Stanfield in it.
Yeah.
Indie games are video games. They're real property. They're art. They're things people should pay attention to, not like, oh, well, that was great. Anyway, here's Night Game with a crazy budget.
No, I mean, it's why I'm so excited that we're going to get a Dredge movie. We're going to get an Iron Lung movie. Like, even good, bad, I don't care. I'm glad we're getting them. Like, that's another experience. Like, Iron Lung was an hour. I played it years after it came out because I'm starting to dabble in horror games. I guess I like them now. And I couldn't shut up about it after playing it for an hour. Like, Click Holding, I haven't gotten yet, but I will, of course. But even for me, the pinnacle of this mentality of, like, a rising tide raises all ships is Before Your Eyes. Is a game that is an hour and a half, And I have to shout out Kenneth Shepard, who made me and our entire group chat play it, often in a group chat, like online on Discord, so we could all feel things together. And like, it's become one of those games now that sight unseen when someone's like, oh, I need a quick game, I want to play an indie, you know, someone recommend anything, I recommend that first, because I'm like, you can play it in an hour and a half, you just need a webcam, hell, you just need a phone now.
Yeah.
Play this thing. And to bring it back to 6-1 Indie before we wrap up, I think the ethos of you guys that I really love, and I got to see in person at East this year, is like, the community that you guys have isn't like people trying to get close, trying to like mingle, and like there is that. We're all promoting each other, but it's just a genuine group of people who like each other and want to play games and celebrate games. And like my favorite thing about East, especially when Geoff and I were there together at a show for the first time in a while, is that there were a ton of games that have since come out that like we just couldn't believe existed and no one knew about. And to this day, I'm still celebrating some of those games and like, wait, that's out or that exists?
Yeah.
And that's my favorite thing, is to keep pushing that forward. I want to ask before we wrap up, if there is one thing, sight unseen, cost is no object, that you could add to what you're already doing.
Oh, I got
to
it.
elevate. Oh, you
Sure,
already?
I mean, do we share the dream? Do we put that on blast?
I mean, I don't know if it's the same dream. I think it is, but like,
the conversation we had during East with an individual.
Sure,
you say your thing.
The dream is to have like an actual in-person presence at a convention.
Yes.
Our own thing where we have the games there, we have the devs, a mixed like event, like where
6-1 Indie Fest.
Exactly. Like something where we can have a space similar to like the old school indie mega booth at old PAXs, have that kind of there too, as a way to supplement these games that we believe in, we want to show off. And the biggest thing, like we could show them, but I would also love people to actually play them and experience them. That to me is a huge goal.
Yeah. One of my favorite things that doing at PAX West that wasn't actually PAX West was also the same weekend as the Seattle Indie Expo.
Yes.
Which was a far smaller to do and a much smaller footprint, but it was no less important and no less fun. And I definitely made some good friends just going there and doing that.
Playcrafting used to have a pre-show at PAX East where they would rent out like a bar space in the hotel that connects to
at the Westin.
The convention at the Westin. And there would be like 20 or 30 smaller devs that either couldn't get into the PAX show floor or
couldn't afford it.
Or couldn't afford it, and just go and play and these cool little bite-sized games that were there. It's
no less worthy.
Exactly.
No less worthy.
I love that.
The biggest dream and the biggest goal I have, and this is tied to like conversations I've had with other parties, I want to make whatever we want to call it, but like I want to make Indie E3 quote unquote a thing where where the family does come together for a weekend or a week of like these showcases and a big ass physical event where games that are shown at the 6-1 showcase has a section, games shown at the Mix has a section, games shown at Games for Games has a section. Again, like going back to something I said earlier, none of this is a competition. We're not trying to fight each other on this. Like, I really want to unite the families, if that makes sense. If we want to talk
the
about
Infinity Stones, we're getting the gauntlet together.
Really, like, make it a true collaborative effort, because, like, what you guys are saying, like, rising tide raises all ships. Like, that's what we got to do to help, like, legitimize the scene and make people, the wider gaming industry and fandom, if you want to call it a fandom, respecting and give these games the time of day. So that is the overarching dream that if I had $3 million, that I would do.
I love that dream, and I look forward to it happening. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but as more think about it, more put it together, I see that being a possibility.
Yeah. Consider me the living embodiment of shut up and take my money, because if there's any way I can support a dream like that, I'm in. Like, also, if you need event coverage, you've got
totally.
Anyway,
I can announce so many things. And
exactly. Jeff's a voice actor. He can do VO. It's great.
Whatever you need.
We come cheap.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. But, and I suppose a lighter, just kind of, I don't know, funky variety question, because I like asking about, whenever we have folks on, asking things about just you as a gamer.
Oh, I was gonna give you some scoops to end it, but I'll play this game. We can
end on scoops. We can end on scoops. This occurred to me, and I wanted to ask this.
Sure.
Matt and I are able to cover the games we want to cover. We're just Fun and Games podcast, hi there, whatever kind of thing. But putting together the showcase, you have a lot to consider, a lot of everything else. And there's a little bit of, I imagine, dealing with your own personal biases of how you feel about certain games. I'm not going to ask what genres or what things you have to, like, get over. What are the ones that you have to be like, oh, man, I love this? For Matt and I, it would absolutely be a, yeah, of course you do. It's a Metroidvania. You're gonna, you dumb, just dial it back. Is it a good Metroidvania? Yes, it's Lucid. Okay, good. But, like, do you have any, like, I don't know, tropes, genres, something where you're like, damn it, you've got me, and now I need to be objective about it?
If no one has noticed, we live a little heavy into horror. Because the horror indie space is so cool, and as a new horror fan myself, when playing games, it's...
Yeah. Dread XP has made me a believer.
There are so many cool horror games that submit, and that's always a painful kind of selection process. We were planning actually a full horror showcase at some point, but again,
and then Dread XP in the mix. Yeah, we're like, all right, let's scrap that plan.
Yeah, horror is definitely one we lean more into because, man, indie games and horror, they do really cool, fresh ideas.
Yeah, it's like
it's the state of it, of course.
We said it in, I believe we said it, that we made it part of the script in the March showcase. It's something we always say, just like in regular conversation or when we're doing the podcast, like the indie horror space is where like the most innovative stuff is happening in the games industry. Horror like generally has no rules. Like horror doesn't equate to scary.
No.
You don't have to have a game filled with jump scares. And there's plenty of those games out there that just want to kind of capitalize on like a quick jump scare and like, oh my God, this game's incredible. But like something that's more nuanced, something that has like helps fill you with dread. It's something that's just like honestly goofy and funny, but also has some sinister vibes to it. Like there is like so much you could do within horror. It's like outstanding. And I think our horror, of course, okay, here's scoop number one. Give spoilers. We have a horror segment during this one.
Boom.
Another scoop. The four horror games that we got, like all are so like distinctly different from one another. Like we got your like, this game is going to scar you kind of game, but also things that are just like, I can't say more than that,
yeah,
but like, yeah, like outside of that as well.
Yeah. And to add to that, just for me personally, I always gravitate towards, again, strong emotional narrative games. That's something I love. And before this episode ends, I do, because you shout out Before Your Eyes, Matt.
Yeah.
If any of your listeners or you guys have not played The First Tree yet, please play The First Tree. It's 2 hours, 2 to 3. I played it one night. I was weeping at the end of the day. I love crying playing games because it means I'm connecting with them. First Tree's excellent. But like strong emotional narrative-based games as well as like it's goofy as all hell. It's a fun time. That's why I love when we had Hot Buns on the showcase.
Hot Buns, man.
Like what a concept.
Banger.
What a fun time. Like, yeah, Squirrel with a Gun. Of course I want to show off that game because it's just fun.
See, Ed, my tell is I also enjoy that, but I take it to the extreme. I like weird goddamn things like.
Oh, I had to put my foot down on this one. There are some weird ass games. Like, no way.
I was fighting so hard. But of course, 6-1 Indie is a democracy, and we do have a voting system. But like, man, there's this first person fly game where you play as a little fly and you're zooming around. Man, I wanted to get that in there so bad, but I got
because jumping flash doesn't give you enough motion sickness.
Listen, picture like Frog Monster if you're familiar with that, or like the vibes of the grunge horror that like Crow Country's doing. But you're first person, you're a fly, and there's just ghouls and goblins around.
Yeah, all right.
I'm in. Let's go. This was awesome. I mean, I've wanted to do this for a while. You guys have been such great collaborators on side quests. Kyle, you've done 2. Mike's done 1. When Mike has 3 minutes to rub together, I'll ask him for another. But like,
I'll make all the time in the world for you, baby. Tell me when.
I love you. I love you.
Love you too.
But like, there are a lot of folks in the industry who get along, and I've met lots of lovely people. But then there are the few people you meet that you're like, oh, we're the same. Our brain is the same. And like, those are some of my favorite connections. And you and Kyle from moment one, just interacting online and then finally meeting in person. I remember the first time I interacted with Mike at East, Mike just looking at me and went, it's you. I was like, it is me.
Yeah.
It's just, I love that sense of community. It's why Geoff and I do this, among a lot of other things. And to bring you on here to talk about pioneering, I will say it, pioneering the indie showcase space in unique ways. You're not the only ones doing it, but you are doing something unique. And the fact that you're collaborating with these other indie showcases as well to make something bigger and better just fills me with love, but also hope, which I think is so vital right now. So thank you both for joining us. Before we wrap up and do our sales pitch that we do every episode, I would love for you guys to promote 6-1 Indie, what you got going on, give dates for stuff you can give dates for, and like just promote the incredible work you do.
You got it, Mike.
I got it. So the 6-1 Indie Showcase for September 2024 is happening on September 19th. 61indie.com is your best place to keep up with that stuff. As we have more news to share about it, we will. We are actively in pre-production at the moment. Thank God I'm bald already. Looking at the games lineup, I like genuinely, and I feel like we sound like a broken record every time we do one of these. I think this is going to be our strongest one yet, especially with some of those tweaks that we're implementing. I'm really confident and really excited to get back up to New York in a couple of weeks to film this thing with Kyle. I think it's going to be a stellar show. So September 19th, more info to share as we get closer, but keep an eye on that. Of course, we also have what we announced earlier in the year. We have the Indie Game Awards that will be happening in Q4. Maybe on September 19th, you'll learn when I mean by when I say Q4. Stay tuned. But yeah, similar to the showcases, obviously there was a conversation in the past few years about indie representation at the Game Awards proper. And since that initial conversation a few years back, we have had our own conversations internally. And after last year with Sea of Stars and a montage and see you later, we finally said it like, screw it. Let's go for it. Let's do it. So that is happening in Q4.
And we fully expect, similar to our very first showcase, it's not going to be perfect. We don't claim it's going to be perfect,
like,
but
proof of concept.
This is the starting off point. And then again, just like we did with the showcase, we're going to learn from it and fix it or add to it in the best way possible, because we just want to celebrate the people who sacrifice so much to give us a new entry in the hobby that we all love, which is video games.
No, when it happens, we'll be front row.
Hell
yeah, you bet your ass.
That's happening later in the year as well. Of course, we have our normal content when we have time. We do a weekly podcast called the 6-1 IndieCast. That's on everywhere, socials, all that, or podcast services, YouTube. Best way to support us, if you go to youtube.com/61indie, hit that little subscribe button. That'd be great. We do writing and stuff as well. We have a banger editorial team. There's a bunch of stuff that's up on the website currently with like previews and reviews dropping.
If you want to help with production of showcases, everything we do, consider supporting us on Patreon. Even if it's only $1, it helps out a ton. So yeah, Mr. K-Set personally on Twitter, pretty much everywhere.
Oh yeah, it's Mike Town.
Yeah,
it's Mike Town.
At 6-1
It is Mike Town.
It is Mike Town, baby.
It is Mike Town.
Thank you both. We adore you. We're so glad to do this, and we'll definitely do it again soon.
Thank you.
Possibly when the Game Awards are coming up, we've got something more concrete. That's a whole nother topic to talk about as far as the indie space goes. So
I'm totally down after the showcase. If you want us to come back on and we could talk about all the games, I'm so down to do that too.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Twist my arm. Jeez.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, tough to convince us. And listeners, have you heard of the 6-1 IndieCast? If you haven't, did you learn something today? If you do have favorite showcases, what are they? Let us know. If there are things you've seen in other showcases that you think are really cool ideas or stuff that maybe would be fun to see in other spaces, let us know. Ultimately, while yes, it is an hour of commercials, these are commercials that we're excited about, and we want to share that love for these products because we do live in a capitalist hellscape. So if we're going to, we might as well have a good time while we're here. Share your thoughts. Shout out to Kyle and Mike wherever they are. Let them know what you love, don't love. I mean, these are two humans who want to grow and grow with the industry. So let us know
at me, cowards.
Damn right.
Yeah, just keep your shadow opinions to yourself because shadow rules.
No. You let those fly, okay?
Yo, you want to talk about indie bangers real quick? I forgot the name of the game, but a Chow Garden game started their alpha today. Oh boy.
All right.
Oh boy.
Well, forget the pre-production stuff. Mike's gone.
This is the lively debate. But a good indie showcase, a good showcase, yes, it's an hour of commercials, but it is also the platonic ideal or the culmination of what is essentially just real good word of mouth recommendations to each other, which is something that I think a lot of us strive for and very much the vibe that Matt and I like having with what we do here. So let us know what things you've enjoyed from 6-1 Indie or what you would want to see on something like those sorts of showcases or other great indie showcases as well, because 6-1's here right now. now, and they are amongst our favorites, but there's so many good ones out there. And let us know, of course, what indie games you're seeing right now that we didn't mention. There's great stuff out there. There's, let me do the math here, a little less than 1,200 games that were submitted for the next showcase that unfortunately couldn't make it, but are no less worthy. So a good way for us to hear about it, you to hear about it, is we all get in touch with each other. Reach out. Let us know. There's so many great ways to get in touch with us. We are Fun and Games Pod across all social media that we participate in right now. And as of this episode, that is Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and Tumblr. You can email us at funandgamespod@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of this episode, what you thought of previous episodes, who you'd like us to talk with, what you'd like us to talk about in future episodes. That's a great spot to send us anything about these indie games that you're interested in, or send us pictures of your game collection. No one's done it yet. I want to see them.
2 things. Bobo Bay is the Chow Garden game. Go support new future kids. Also, find me on Twitter. Let me know if you squeegee your body.
Oh, my God.
Again, lively debates. Speaking of lively debates, you can go to certainpov.com and find not only other fantastic Certain POV podcasts, but also a permanent invite link to our Discord server, where we will talk about Bobo Bay. So we'll probably be talking about that at some point soon, as well as other titles we're trying out, and maybe squeegeeing after the shower or wherever else our minds have taken us, because that's what it's all about. If you want a one-stop shop of everything we're putting out and everything we're working on with this show, you can also go to our Patreon, patreon.com/funandgamespod. There is a free tier. You do not have to donate any money to be a patron, but we appreciate all the support at all of the tiers, and we'd like to shout out those that are on the high score tier and above. Today, the high score board is Alex Lavelle, Case Aiken, Daniel Needon, Roger Reichart, Alejandro Alves, Curly Bright, Film It Yourself, Patrick Edwards, Robert Prine, Sean Bowen, and Wes Bates. Thank you so much for your support. Please enter your initials. They are totally going to fly by the screen, and this cool eye catch is going to happen, or we're going to get a coming soon kind of thing going about it, and it'll do the whole whooshy whoosh, dynamic as fuck. So please no profanity. I hit our PG-13 limit in just talking about it. I'm so sorry, but thank you.
Whooshy whoosh is the technical term, by the way. I did look it up.
Absolutely.
Also, if you want to support us without using any money, you can go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Pocket Casts, anywhere you can rate and review the podcast. It's a huge help. That way, if someone Googles showcases in the game industry, they'll find this lovely podcast. It really does help, though. It buffs the algorithm. It allows other folks to find this little indie podcast, and it only takes a few minutes of your time.
And in whatever way you support the show, whether Patreon, rates and reviews, or just listening to this episode, thank you so much for being here. It's especially true with everything we were talking about in this episode and everybody involved. We couldn't do this without you. This is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I am Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming. Hey.
Oh, hey, Geoff.
What's going on, guys?
Oh, talking about Superman.
Oh, cool. I could talk about Superman.
I could talk some more about Superman.
We know.
I'll bet a few people would want to get in on this.
I'm down.
You know it.
That sounds like fun. I'll do it.
Cool, let's do it. We can call the show Men of Steel.
And you can find it at certainpov.com.
Or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.